over some well, basically look at my Twitter feed and we're going to I'll share you the screen, okay? All right, so this is my Twitter feed. Okay. And quite honestly, I don't know what comes onto my Twitter feed, okay? The general says, Xueqin, Elon Musk has asked Rock whether reports claiming that the Congress is hiding the U.S. Israel military relations in the defense bill is true. Yeah, I ignore this. I think this is China. Bill Bishop is saying, was absolutely intending to build an economic choke point with rare earths. That's Japan after 2010. Another bad take from the SIS professor. I don't care. We move very quickly from two-tier policing doesn't exist to two-tier policing does exist and a good thing. I don't care. I don't even know what this is. This is Mariel Nathal, who I don't follow, but he appears in my feed. China didn't wait long to respond. Hours of Japan and Philippines announced maritime delimitation talks east of Taiwan. Beijing launched a law enforcement operation in those waters. Okay, this is something that I will focus on and pay attention to. Okay, actually, Mariel Nathal, you guys should follow him because he's very good. He has a really strong team working behind him. This is a conflict I've been watching very closely. At some point, China and Japan will go kinetic, meaning they will fight over shipping lanes in the South China Sea. They have no choice in the matter, okay? So this is something that I watch and I'll pay attention to. And now what I'll do is I'll keep it back in my mind where, and what I'll remember is this. Japan and the Philippines are working together, okay? I'll also remember that Japan wants to clarify a lot of things in East Asia. So for the longest time, there was strategic ambiguity in these waters, and China kept on encroaching, especially its shipping vessels. And Japan didn't really bother because Japan didn't want a conflict. But now Japan wants a conflict, so Japan will be much more clear about where its territorial waters are. Okay, so this is something I'm going to watch very, very closely. Okay, this emerging conflict between China and Japan in the South China Sea. Mr. Relatable says, "Are the Albanians really going door to door and running up Israelis?" This is BS. This is not true. This is not even funny. Okay. Adam Corolla says, he's a sociopath and hears about nothing. I interviewed him and have no idea who he is. I can't say that about anyone else. Imitation. The question is why he is that attractive to people. I obviously have no idea who he's talking about. Okay. High cortisol is the real reason you can't sleep through the night. Look, yeah, this is something I'm interested in because I have problems sleeping. It's cortisol, but I have cortisol because the world is screwed up, guys. All right, that's the issue. It's not because you shouldn't be stressful. It should be you should be stressed because the world is screwed up. So I scroll through this a lot. So the Pentagon just declared Israel an enemy of the U.S. the same way Congress voted to merge our militaries with theirs. Everything like that. This is a great post, and it shows you the dissonance at play here, right? And that's why I'm interested in what's going on because the question is raised as to why the Pentagon is leaking about its concern about Israel, while at the same time Congress is voting to merge these two militaries. It shows you these factional struggles within the American military. Tim Dillon is great, by the way. I love Tim Dillon. I think he's the funniest comedian right now. Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner have purchased their private island with a bunker because they know something big is coming within the next 6 months. This is not true, by the way, okay? Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner, these people, they live in a fantasy world where they are the best and the brightest, where they got to where they are because they worked hard, they're smarter than everyone else, and the world is just perfect. And they don't have a conscious understanding of the public outrage at people like them. So they live in fantasy world. They're delusional. They don't really think. They don't really believe that the world will turn against them. They think they control the world and they are the perfect rulers and everyone loves them. So they bought that island not because they want to build a bunker. They bought that island because, first of all, it's not their money. They're just the front people, right? They're just the actors. They bought the island because it was a good investment. It's as simple as that. Um, Kash Patel is investigating all China's own trip to Russia. That I think this I think is true. This I think has credibility. I won't be surprised if there's concern among the FBI that Candace Owens is now under the influence of the Russians. You know, for the longest time, the FBI, the CIA, the NSA were spying on Tucker Carlson. You guys don't remember this, but Tucker Carlson, when he was at Fox News, yeah, he was actually scheduled to go to Russia to interview Vladimir Putin, and the CIA they spied on Tucker Carlson. They knew about this, and they sabotaged the trip. Tucker Carlson would eventually go, of course, but that was like 4 or 5 years after he originally wanted to go. Axel Dugan says, if it is Israel, are you also willing to know? Okay. Sean Rand, and Escobar. Okay, so I'm just scrolling through and I'm telling my thought process, okay? And I'm doing this really, really fast. So my mind is able to prioritize what's important. My mind is also able to figure out what's fake, what's not fake. But it's because I've been doing this for a long time, okay? All right. All right. Wakar asks, do you think Iran will use its military power to fight back and attack and take over some countries to create a second line of defense? No, I think a ground offensive by the Iranians would be complete suicide, right? Because then you're exposed to air power, and that's what the Americans and Israelis specialize in. So Iran will continue its hide and seek guerrilla warfare strategy throughout. Earl Grey asks, do you think Candace Owens is a deep plant by the MIC? Okay. Yeah. So if you go to the very top, okay, if you go to Washington, D.C., and you go to these parties, if you go to Hamptons for the summer and you go to these parties, guys, these guys are all friends, okay? They're all related to one another. But that doesn't mean they don't actually hate each other, okay? They're all fighting for power. And so they're all related to each other, they're all friends, they all have similar interests. And within these boundaries, within these conditions, they struggle for control over certain things. Okay, so you look at artificial intelligence. Um, most artificial intelligence companies are backed by Wall Street, but it doesn't mean that Silicon Valley and Wall Street don't fight, right? Because they're both trying to direct Washington policy in a certain way that benefits them. So that's something that's really hard for people to appreciate. That at the very top, everyone's playing a multi-dimensional game. Everyone has divided loyalties, allegiances, because everyone's trying to position himself or herself in a way to maximize his or her power. Okay, it's a very complicated game, and that's why they're all psychopaths, man. You know, they're all sociopaths. You can't actually read them. They're amazing poker players. You can never ever read their minds, and you can never actually figure out what their intention is. And that's why it's important to use game theory, because game theory just removes yourself from the personalities and just looks at the game and how the players will try to navigate the game. That gives you the best indicator of how they behave. But yeah, Candace Owens is friends of everyone. Okay? Miko G asks, is it possible Candace is being influenced by foreign intelligence agencies, specifically those opposing the West? Yeah, but I would argue that that's how the world works. I think like there are many different groups and they're all working together and they're all opposing each other. It's not as easy as is Candace a spy? I think she has friends in Mossad. I think she has friends in the KGB, the FSB. I think she has friends in CIA. And she probably doesn't even know it, right? She probably doesn't know these friends are actually CIA or Mossad. And you know, but they'll have dinner together and they'll talk, and then this friend will give her some information that then she will deliver on her show. And so she's being a useful idiot, and that's how the world works. And like that's what makes me unique in that I actually don't talk to people. Because I know, like, if I talk to people, they'll just feed me crap that is meant to influence others. Okay, I'd rather just stick to game theory analysis. Wakar asks, "What do you think about PDB and Mehdi Hassan?" So I've been on both their shows, and my interview with Mehdi Hassan went viral. He's just a very naturally combative person. Uh, he's he's very good at what he does. I mean, he's very good at taking your words and then warping in a certain way that allows him to attack you. Okay, so he's always in attack mode. And PBD, he's a businessman. He's a bit of a hustler. He's a hustler, really, and he likes a lot of back and forth, but he likes to feel you out, right? So when the two are together, Medin Hassan will run him over because Medin Hassan, he's all attack, whereas PBD, he's trying to be smooth, right? So that's not really a fair matchup. Saren Caron asks, how much reach does this have on the people of America? I remember Tucker went to Russia as well. They both are very religious. Is it from that angle to speak to the people of the United States? Listen, I think that Kenneth Owens and Tucker Carlson are two of the most influential people in America right now. I think it's very smart for Russia to try to cozy up to both of them. And I'm not saying they're powerful, not necessarily because of numbers. Okay, I'm saying they're powerful because their fans um, really believe in their message. Their message really is able to resonate with their audience. Also, I have to say that Kenneth Owens and Tucker Carlson are two of the smartest, most savviest media personalities right now. And what makes them really smart is they're able to read the political winds. That's really hard to do, actually, to anticipate the trend, right? Not to follow the trend, but to anticipate the trend. That's what Tucker and Kenneth do really, really well. So, look, Tucker's talking a lot about demons, about spirituality, and so he knows that there's this yearning among the American people for spiritual deliverance. There's almost now a tipping point where a lot of people are now going to return to the faith. The, I think the fastest growing religion in America right now is the Orthodox Church religion because the Orthodox Church religion is the most conservative, the most traditional, the most consistent. So I think Kenneth and Tucker are really smart, and they'll just go from strength to strength. If I were an investor and Tucker and Kenneth were stocks, I put all my money on Kenneth and Tucker. Some media personalities that I think are declining are people like Joe Rogan. They're declining in influence. I think Nick Fuentes is declining in influence as well. I think that Kenneth and Tucker will only become more influential over time. Aerograss, is she Opus Dei? That's a great question. Uh, I think she's Jesuit affiliated. Is she Opus Dei? I don't know. I know that JD Vance is Opus Dei. Opus Dei, if you don't know, is one of the secret societies of the Catholic Church. There are many, many secret societies of the Catholic Church, by the way. But Opus Dei is one most famous. It's extremely hierarchical, and it's extremely messianic. So I would not be surprised at all if she was Opus Dei. It's possible her husband, George Foreman, is Opus Dei, and she's not. That I think is most likely a possibility. Matthew says, how does one even get close to high ups in a group like the Catholic Church? Do you think it's direct when one of them approach each other or informal? I assume the Catholic Church is run by certain families. I think there are certain families that have the real power in the Catholic Church. And so they reach out to you through their agents, their intermediaries, basically. So it's not like, well, come to my house and we'll sign a contract. It's more like, I have a friend who knows you and who's going to pass on messages to you. Okay. Sally asks, as someone who's choosing a military career here in the United States, what can I study further about this possible merge between the U.S. military and Israel? So, if you are going into the U.S. military, I would say a very bright future. Okay. So I think there's certain trends that you should watch out for in the US military. First of all, I think the US military is going to expand rapidly over the next 10, 20 years. The reason why is America needs control over the Western Hemisphere. So I would be surprised if the military went in to colonize places like Mexico, Colombia, Honduras, Cuba, Greenland, possibly even as far as Venezuela. And so basically, if you're in the military, you become basically a viceroy, right? You become a military dictator. And so that's a very good life, right? If you can go and become a part of the military occupation. Another thing that is going to happen in the military is privatization, right? Because what America wants to do is retreat from the world and focus on the Western Hemisphere. And so the best way to do that is to privatize your military and then merge your private military with Japan, Germany, Israel, right? Okay. The idea is you privatize the military, they become companies that then sign contracts with host nation states such as Israel, Japan, and Germany. Okay, that I think are the two major trends: a military occupation of the Western Hemisphere, and the privatization of the American military, which then merges into other nation states. Okay, but if you're in the military, that's a very good future. And Wong asks, are most of the data centers dubious? Seems like just hide trouble, fire the workers, fake the data center to keep the stock from collapsing. Yeah, listen, I have absolutely no idea what's going on in these data centers. And they're so huge, right? So I would not be surprised if these data centers are being set up as a false flag. And what I mean by that is they store all the financial data in these data centers and then it's blown up, right? By this um, lone wolf, Unabomber guy who at all is not MK Ultra, who at all is not CIA affiliated, not at all. Okay, but he's working by himself. He's not part of this CIA team. But the data center is blown up, and oops, all that financial data is gone, and it's the Iranians who did this. So yeah, so I would not be surprised if there was a false flag attack on these data centers at some point. Matthew asks, thoughts on Nick Fuentes? Look, I think Nick is a really talented guy. I've never met him. I don't know him. I've never been on his live stream. He would never invite me for a conversation. I'm very close with Sneeko, who's also very close with Nick. I think he's a really smart guy, but I think at the same time, he's deeply compromised. Certain things he says suggest that he's not free to say whatever he wants. His um, Jewish, his anti-Semitic rants, I think are not at all organic. I can understand why someone's angry at Israel. I can understand why people have problems with Zionism, but the fact that he attacks um, uh, Jewish people, I think it's problematic. I think he's a smart guy. I think he's capable of nuance and subtlety. The fact that on this Jewish question he refuses to have nuance and subtlety, I think it's problematic. Also, if you really want to understand why Nick Fuentes is probably compromised, Google January 6th and Nick Fuentes. It's a very problematic thing, okay? But once you read about his actions on January 6th and the fact that he was not at all charged or persecuted for what he did on January 6th, it suggests that he's probably compromised, okay? So January 6th and Nick Fuentes. Wakara asks, can I organize a meeting in Toronto with you, with like-minded people? Okay, I am going back to Toronto. I am going back to North America. But I haven't figured out what I want to do yet. And so let me think about this, okay? It's still 2 months out before I return to Toronto. So let me think about how I want to structure my time because I'm a very private person and I don't want to become a celebrity in Toronto. I'm in China and no one knows who I am. And I prefer it that way. So let me think about how to best meet people in Toronto. If we do a small meetup, I'm okay with that. But if it's a public event, I'm not okay with that. I don't be mobbed by people. I don't want people following me back to my house. Archer asks, is AI about to get an '08 style bailout, or is it going to be from an investor? It's going to get a bailout, guys. The government's going to take over AI at some